The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 181. Michigan falls to Ohio State in the season finale. That and more on this week's show.
Oh man, Euchre's been broadcasting for 27 years. I have never seen anything like this. They need 2 inches. Dennis Franklin, the quarterback, taking a long count from center. He hands off to Shuttlesworth 5, and it's down to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Dennis Franklin! Oh my God, Dennis Franklin fooled everybody. He fooled me. He fooled the entire Ohio State team. Kneeling is Larry Gustafson. Attempting will be Super Toe. Super Toe will kick the 30-yard field goal. It's kicked to send over there. It's a tied-up ball game. 10-10. Okay. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Carter ends up. Carter's down. Oh my God! Carter scores! Look at those Wolverines. 95 Wolverines going in the end zone. Carter got the pass in the air. It's done. Buford is going out of his mind. I have never seen anything like this in all my 40 years of covering Michigan football.
This is the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. The Wolverines fall to Ohio State in the season finale in a tough, heartbreaking loss. On today's show, we're going to be joined on our Michigan Gameday segment in just a couple of minutes by Michigan beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive, and we'll get Nick's take on the game plan, Devin Gardner's play, just a lot of good stuff, so I hope you will stick around for that. Just a quick show reminder, I'm going to be taking a quick vacation away next week, but the show will go on. We taped a segment with Michigan great Greg Skrepenak, also talking about the Ohio State game, reviewing the season, and Greg's thoughts on this Michigan team moving forward. Coach Brady Hoke, just a lot of good, interesting stuff. So please join us next week for that. On our view from Section 17 this week, I thought the offense was just spectacular on Saturday against Ohio State, over 600 yards. It made you wonder where that kind of a game plan was the last couple of weeks, really most of the year. For whatever reason, it worked, and it worked well on Saturday. The defense was another story. I don't know if anyone can stop that Ohio State offense or even slow them down. They were as good as advertised, but a tough loss for Michigan. So now we wait until this weekend after the Big Ten championship game and all of the other conference championship games to see where we go. Is it going to be on New Year's Day? Is it going to be between Christmas and New Year's? We really don't know, but we will find out on Sunday night. It was a long, tough season, not only for the team to endure this year, but we as fans, and it would have been oh so sweet to pull off that victory on Saturday and have an 8-4 record going into the bowl game. But that did not happen. On our Michigan Game Day segment, we talk about that and more with Michigan beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive. That is coming up next here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. With us on Michigan Game Day as we wrap up that disappointing loss to Ohio State over the weekend, Michigan beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive. Welcome back, Nick.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing okay. It's been such a long season, 12 games, and it's just been, I don't even know if it's been a roller coaster ride. It's just been one grueling season to watch, and we got to gruel again on Saturday against Ohio State. Tough loss.
Yeah, I mean, this game was a lot of things, and a lot of different, stuff happened. But just, I guess, when everything is stripped away and you pull everything back and look at it for, I guess, all it really is at the end of the day, it's just like you say, it's another, another loss that Michigan was, 2 points away, 3 plays away, 2 plays away, 1 play away, whatever it is, from getting a win. And that has been the, unquestioned story of the season, that this football team has been a handful of something away from, being a winning football team. And that's really kind of the mark of a 7-5 team in my book. I mean, everything else aside, as hard as they fought Saturday, I think that's just the story of the season, that they just weren't able to put everything together at the same time. You can call it snake-bitten or anything else if you want, but I think I call it, a team that's just trying to find its way, and a team that's maybe sort of learning, and a team that just frankly wasn't good enough at the right time to put together a, 9, 10, 11 win season.
Nick, let's start with the question that we've heard nonstop since Saturday. I mean, from the moment that Urban Meyer called a timeout, do you kick and go for OT, or do you go for 2?
Yeah, actually, I thought about that before Ohio State scored to go up 42-35. And you kind of figured they would, because the way they were driving the football, they got down to the 10 or something, and I thought to myself, if Michigan gets the ball back and goes down and scores, I thought I would absolutely go for 2. So when they called timeout and pulled the PAT team off the field and brought the offense back out there, I thought it was absolutely the right call. I thought 3 things. I thought your kicker was hurt. Brendan Gibbons was injured. Matt Weil was kicking. He actually missed a field goal that they called timeout on earlier in the game, so there's 1. So you don't want to really go with him in overtime. 2, Devin Gardner was, I think, exhausted. I think he was about done. I think he might have had 1, maybe 2 more plays in him, and that was going to be that, because he was just beat up so bad from the whole year and everything else. And 3, your defense couldn't stop anything. And I just can't imagine overtime would have gone well, given what Gregson or Hive were doing. So I just thought the writing was on the wall. I thought you had to go for 2, and that was just the right decision.
And I didn't so much disagree with the call. I thought it was not bad at all. It was a gutsy call, to say the least. But I think the thing, looking at it yesterday on tape, that bothered me is Michigan came out in formation. Ohio State took a look at what formation they were in, called a timeout, and then Michigan trotted out in the same formation again after the timeout. And, after the game, Ohio State players said, when they came out in that formation, we kind of knew there were 2 things they like to do down there, so we just had to be in the right setup. So that's the only question I have there. Why didn't Al Borges mix it up? And I never really heard him address that. I know he doesn't talk to the media after the game Saturday, but that was puzzling.
Yeah, and again, that's another one of those things that's a recurring deal all year long. When defense comes back out and says we knew exactly what they were going to run, because they didn't adjust, right? And that's just one of those deals that we've, it's been a constant criticizing point we've had all season. And not to take away from Al Borges' day on Saturday, which was, other than that, was fantastic. He called a terrific game, kept them in the football game. The offense put up 600-some yards. I thought the screen pass that he called on the last touchdown drive was one of the best calls he's had all season, maybe the best call he's had all season. So he did so many great things in that game, but when it came right down to it, and it boiled right down to the end, they didn't adjust. Ohio State calls timeout. They see a formation. They say this is what they're going to do. If they come back out in that formation again, sure enough, they do. They don't change anything, and away we go. And it's just, you have to adjust. And I don't know if that's something where they say, well, we have a young football team. Maybe they can't handle that. I don't buy that at all. It's game 12. They play their butts off the entire time. Why don't you? And like I said, we don't talk to El Borges. I don't know if we're going to talk to him this week, but I'm sure that the next time we do see him, that'll be a question. But that was just another one of those things in a long line of, with Hoke and with everybody else. Just can you make those decisions in that minute and on the spot and in that half second? That's what makes Urban Meyer such a terrific coach. Is they always make those those adjustments, on the fly as they're going, and they almost always seem to work. Brady Hoke and company, they had to do the same thing, and they didn't on Saturday. And I thought they played a great game, and I thought coached a great game up until then, offensively anyway. That was a mistake.
Well, and if anyone's been beaten up more than Devin Gardner this year, it has to be Al Borges. Everyone is on him. But the offensive game plan, I thought it was creative. It was aggressive on Saturday, which leads to another of many questions after this game. Where has that been for the last month?
Yeah, well, all year, really. I mean, if we're being honest, I just, I don't know. I think that he finally, last week against Iowa, I thought that he called kind of a scared game, a nervous game, didn't really know what to do, just sort of a thing that, there's a few times in there, especially in November, where it seemed like he was calling games without any understanding of what kind of personnel he had, especially on the offensive line, because, on Saturday, I think the offensive line played better, but it wasn't like they were just rooting people out of there and driving people 25 yards on the field. What was happening was, Borges was calling these plays that were, quick hit plays that were taking pressure off of the offensive line, doing the vertical stuff with the bubble screens and the hitches and everything else that were taking defenders out of the box, and then eventually it was helping them because they were having, instead of having to block 3 guys, it was only 1. So he was playing to Michigan's strengths, which were Jeremy Gallen and Funchess and Devin, and, and what they had. He was playing to what they had and what they did, and not trying to shove something in there that wasn't there. And that is where I question, where was that and where has that been? Because if you do that against Penn State when things start to go bad and you realize what you've got going on there, instead of just getting all upset, blaming everything on the offensive line and refusing to adjust, then you're not in this position. So, that right there shows the potential of what the offense can be and brings up even more questions of why wasn't it that for all of November and most of October and most of the year. So, I don't know. I don't know what this does for him, to be honest. I think there's still so many more questions. And is it good for him that they came out and did this? Maybe, but maybe not, because it's just like, well, you had this offense the whole year and you never took advantage of it. So what happened then? And that's a question that'll go forward right into the bowl.
Well, another question is, you saw Derek Green, Davion Smith, and Fitz Toussaint all getting their carries, which leads to yet another question. Why were we not deploying that kind of an attack before Saturday?
Yep, and I put that one on Hoke, to be quite honest with you. That's his decision. Who plays is Brady Hoke's decision, and who doesn't play and how much they play and everything else. And I'm not going to pretend to know what goes on behind the locker room. They don't let us in there. At practice, they don't let us in there and all that. But as the year went on, especially when you got to the middle of October, it made zero sense to me to not do what they did on Saturday every single game, which was to divvy up these carries in a way that all 3 of them were pretty much getting equal. Davion Smith and Derek Green were probably getting a few more, and whoever had the hot hand was just going to be the guy that went with it. They didn't do that. They didn't do that against Michigan State. They didn't do that against Nebraska. They finally did it against Northwestern, and then they really didn't do it again against Iowa, and it didn't make any sense. Fitz, I think Fitz, again, played a terrific game in the role that they had for him, and the one thing I did question the whole time was, knowing Fitz Toussaint, and we've gotten to know him over the last 4 years, he is a team guy. I'll say that about him. He says some things, and he said some things this year that people are upset about, but Fitz, for the most part, is a kid that just wants to win football games. And, anyone would be upset if they lost their job to a younger kid. But Fitz wasn't going to just go to the bench and never play. You would have had a role for him, which is exactly what it was the other day, which was catch the ball out of the backfield, block on 3rd down, and get a carry once in a while, and help the football team out. He would have been able to do that, and probably would have been fine with it. I mean, and would have had no complaints. So he would have been the one guy that if you had sat down as a senior and pulled out of there and said, it's time to get these other kids in here, he would have probably been one of the few guys that accepted it well. And why that never happened, I don't know. And I put that on Hoke, and I think that's another issue where you're hurting yourself. And it's just, I go back to the same thing in a different manner last year when Denard Robinson gets hurt, and you make a decision to go with Russell Bellamy over the logical decision after a while when that wasn't working to get rid of him in that Nebraska game and put Gardner in and see anything that happened and give yourself a chance to stay in the Big Ten race. Those decisions are head coach decisions, and those are the ones that are the difference between being a very good team and a team that's not getting it done, and that really is what I boil it all back down to.
Well, Nick, I'm certain Devin Gardner's going to remember the failed two-point attempt from Saturday. He talked about that after the game. He always takes the blame. He's a stand-up guy.
Mm-hmm.
But despite the beating he's taken this year and the criticism he's taken, he was big time on Saturday overall, wasn't he?
Yep, that was the best game he's played ever. I think Indiana was, 45 more yards or something like that, passing-wise, and one more touchdown, but that was Indiana. This was Ohio State, who doesn't have a terrific defense, but is still the number 3 team in the country, and this was a game where Michigan had no chance. No one gave them any hope. I know he's hurt. Everyone knows he's hurt. He's been hurt for weeks, and, he just kind of sucked up and played football, and just exactly what a quarterback is supposed to do. That was one of the better, and you'll look back on that when everything goes away, and win or loss, that was one of the better individual quarterbacks, or individual performances by a Michigan quarterback that you will ever you'll ever see. If you look back in the annals of all the history and everything else, what he did on Saturday, given the situation, given the opponent, you're not going to find one that's better than that. And that says a lot, And for his season, when you scrape it back and look at it, there's a chance that Devin Gardner ends up with the most passing yards ever in a single year in Michigan football history. He's going to finish at least in the top 3 in touchdown passes. He's going to finish at least in the top 7 or 8 in career passing yardage, even though this is only his first year. He has had, outside of those interceptions, if you take those away, he has had a terrific football season. And he's had some issues and some errors, and everybody likes to blame him because they always do, and that's just what happens at quarterback. But, the fact that he kept coming out every week and answering the bell and given everything he had, I think says an awful lot about him as not just a player, but as a person. I think he proved a lot to himself and to anybody who was really paying attention this season that he's a pretty tough guy, and he's a pretty good football player when it all comes right down to it.
No, he's a darn good football player. When I would listen to Michigan fans complain at the game, or when they would email me or talk to me, I would say, okay, you're not happy with his progress at quarterback, but think for a minute. Take him out of that offense, and what do you have this year?
You have 10 losses.
That's right.
Because he made up for a lot of mistakes. He cleaned up a lot of messes that you don't see, and he did it again on Saturday with his feet and everything else. And that's he's got when everything clicks for Devin Gardner, it's you can't defend him. And we said this in September after the Notre Dame game. If everything works and everything's on the right page and everything's locked in for Devin Gardner, you cannot defend this offense because he is unlike just about any. He's a Johnny Manziel that's bigger, and you can't defend him. Problem is not everything clicked all the time, and that's what he has to work on, and that's what I'm sure he'll continue to work on moving forward.
Our guest here in our Michigan Game Day segment, as we do our post-mortem on the Ohio State loss on Saturday, Michigan beat reporter Nick Baumgardner from MLive. Nick, for the better part of the season, the offense floundered, and then the defense kept Michigan hanging around in games. Not once did we see both units playing well at the same time, and that again was the case on Saturday. The Michigan D was just dreadful, wasn't it?
Yeah, and never once did we even see two average performances from both sides. It was either one side, one part did very, very well, and the other was terrible. There was no other option. So, another, I guess, mark of kind of just a 7-5 football team, right? Just a team that just never really got it all together. Offensively they're shining from the minute it starts, and then defensively, I thought there was a couple series early in the game where they were right there. Forced Ohio State to punt on their first drive, forced them to 3rd and long on the second drive, and then here we go. Jared Wilson's got a cast on his arm, he's out of the game, and Josh Herman doesn't play an awful lot's in there, and Braxton Miller burns it for a touchdown. And, it's just like one thing. It's 10 guys doing their job, one guy not doing his job, and away we go. And that happened again. On the next drive, Courtney Avery misses a tackle. Braxton Miller goes the whole way for a touchdown. And then from there, they got nothing done. It was just, Carlos Hyde is, I said to somebody, I think Carlos Hyde is probably a 3-game suspension away from probably winning the Heisman Trophy. I think he's the best running back in college football, and I think he's maybe the best offensive weapon in college football, and then Braxton Miller isn't too far behind. So there's no answer for any of that. It wasn't anything fancy. I think Ohio State probably ran 5 plays the whole game, and they just couldn't stop any of them. And it was those 2 guys. It was just, nice blocking up front, and those 2 guys getting to the second level, and it was done. And that was story of the game, and they just couldn't do anything about it.
Nick, in Monday's MLive, you wrote that after 3 seasons under Brady Hoke, this team still has no identity, and that's very hard to explain, isn't it?
It is, and we ask him that all the time of what's the identity of this team, what's the identity, whatever. And the only identity I can come up with consistently was that they play hard, and they don't give up, and that's a fine trait and a fine characteristic to have, and an admirable one, and not one that everybody can have. But that can't be your identity. You have to be more than that. You have to be a team that does something well on the field, not just from something inside yourself. I mean, you've got to be able to execute something well. They do, offensively, they do so many things. They have so many formations. They have so many looks. They do so many different things. They don't do any of it well. And then defensively, they'll play well for 56 minutes and give up just get shredded for 4. I mean, the identity of this team, honestly, is a team that's just right now is too many hiccups away from being good. I mean, that has to be the identity. Is they just don't have one, and they don't do anything really particularly well on offense, and defensively they're still not quite elite enough to carry them and become a team that just relies heavily on its defense and can do whatever it needs to do on offense. So they're still searching for that, and that's interesting. 3 years into your reign here, and I know that they had to overcome a few obstacles in recruiting and all this other sort of stuff of kind of building the team they want. I know what they want their identity to be, which is a power football team who plays nasty defense, but they're not even close to that. And that's got to be concerning for Hoke, for everybody else around him. And he's not in any trouble of losing his job. Dave Brandon said that as much, but at the same time, you got to start taking a step. And next year has to be, really starting with this bowl game. You have to start taking some really big time strides into becoming the football team that you claim you're supposed to be.
I think it's very important with the bowl game coming up, and we'll find out next week who it is we get in the bowl game, where we go. Very important, though, for this team to follow up that Ohio State performance with something similar and get a W to carry it forward in next year. Very important.
Yeah, and you said, I think your last point there, Mark, they have to win. They have to play well. They have to do all these things. But more than that, they have to get the win. They have to finish the game. They have to play it well for 60 minutes for whoever they're playing. I don't care if they get a very good team or a slumping team. It doesn't matter to me at all. They have to leave that thing with a victory and move into the off season with good thoughts and good everything else. Last year at Michigan State, I compare Michigan and Michigan State's season, Michigan State's season last year and Michigan's this year, and they seem almost identical to me. Teams that were just a hair shy almost every week, and found a way to lose football games almost every week. And then at the end of the year, Michigan State found a way right at the end to win a football game and give itself hope over the summer. Even people were doubting them or whatever, but they still had something to hang their hat on, and they went out and had a terrific year. And I think that's a big, big deal. I mean, for young kids to learn how to get a win and learn what it takes to win, and you know what it takes to get in position to have a great game after that Ohio State loss, but to do it and win it, that's got to be it. So you got to have a great month to practice and develop some guys, but more importantly, you got to finish the year with a win and move into your off season here before 2014 with not bitterness and anything else. It's got to be positive.
Yeah, and I think that comparison to Michigan State and how last season went for them is a very good one. You just have to hope that Michigan has similar results and uses everything that happened this year in the off season to move it forward and turn it around next year. I mean, you're right. They're just a click away. It's so very difficult to put a finger on why they can't or why they haven't been able to overcome that.
It is, and it tells me, and I think it says a little bit that they are very close, and that is something that I think that is a positive, for Brady Hoke, that they are close to being a team that can turn a corner, and a team that they were close to 10 wins, but they were also close to 4 wins. So they were awfully close to maybe even 11 wins this season, and that's saying something. And there's a fine line there, and it's going to be what is it really going to be here? Is it going to be glass half full or glass half empty? What are you going to make that? What are you going to do to push yourself over the top? You're at a turning point right now where you're 3 or 4 plays away every game from getting it done. And what I always say is that's not an excuse, because the great teams make the 3 or 4 plays every time, and we don't ever talk about them because you don't ever see them, you don't ever pay attention to them. They're not even question marks. They're just done, and you win the game, and that's that. And that's the difference. They have to find something or some way to push themselves over that line and get into the mode of, now we're just making those plays and we're finding those inches and that hidden yardage and all that stuff that separates, average football teams from very good ones. And that's where they're at right now. And the fact that they are close is encouraging because I've been around teams that are close, that they're nowhere near it. And this isn't the case for Michigan. They're right there. They just need to, figure out a way to push a little harder and get a little cleaner in the detail area and make those, 2-point losses into 10-point wins.
Nick, last week, Dave Brandon, just before Thanksgiving, went public in support of Coach Hoke. What did you make of all that?
Well, I mean, two things of that. One, the timing of it had Jabril Peppers written all over it. Which, the day before, Jabril Peppers comes out and says he wants to take other visits because there are rumors that Brady Hoke's not going to be there next year, and that, to me, was all negative recruiting. I can't, there was nothing, that wasn't coming from here, that was coming from other schools telling this kid, the head coach that you fell in love with is going to be fired. So, I think that, the reason why he came out and did it was, I think, ultimately that right there was, Brady might have gone and said, we got to do something to make sure this kid knows and understands, and he can't talk about him publicly, so that's illegal. And then two, it just wasn't anything surprising. It was probably just an affirmation of what we already knew, and anyone who's been around this. Dave Brandon hired Brady Hoke. He fired Rich Rodriguez, and he hired Brady Hoke, and he hitched his wagon to Brady Hoke 3 years ago. And for him to jump off ship less than 3 years in and say that this isn't good enough, even though Brady Hoke has 26 wins or whatever it is, would be a bad look on Dave Brandon. So it was not a surprise at all. Anyone who's been around, the team or the program or whatever for in any kind of proximity that we are, Brady Hoke was never in jeopardy. This was never a thing of, is Brady Hoke going to lose his job, whatever. This was a lot of internet stuff and people talking and maybe some people hoping. But, all that did was, it allows Brady Hoke to go out and recruit with a clean, with a clean bill on his back. These kids can say, are you going to be there, are you not? And he can say, well, my AD just said absolutely and all that. So I feel like that's kind of like a non-monetary, non-contract extension, where you say you can go out and recruit and you can coach without having to worry about it. And that's all it was. It was awkward and kind of weird, but, probably needed to a degree and something that I'm sure Brady Hoke probably appreciated somewhere deep down, even if he did maybe feel a little embarrassed that had to happen, during that week. But it was what it was, and, as we knew, Brady Hoke's not going anywhere. I don't know what's going to happen with staff, but we know Brady Hoke will be here.
Well, that's right. And as you said, Dave Brandon has hitched his wagon to Coach Hoke. But, in listening to what he had to say last week, it makes you wonder, though, does it extend to the rest of the staff?
Yeah, I don't know. That's the question that I have, in that, Brandon hired Brady Hoke. He didn't hire the staff. So what he may say to him is, you're my guy, but you have to find whoever you need to find to make that, to make this thing work. And, we can read between the lines and reading between the lines with Dave Brandon isn't always the worst thing to do, because a lot of times if you read between the lines with him, you find stuff, because that's just how he is. So read between the lines in that statement he made, and he praises Greg Madison, and he praises a bunch of other former coaches, and there's two names in there that are conspicuously absent. One is Rich Rodriguez, and the other is Al Borges. So I don't, Al Borges is still, they've got to go back after the bowl's over with, depending on how that goes, and look at everything and make a decision on, is this the guy that's going to, continue to lead this offense and continue to take this thing and turn it from a, bad unit into one that has basically is what he created into a productive one that helps us win football games. And that's got to be the question of the offseason for Brady Hoke, and I'm sure it's already begun. You have to evaluate that, and you have to make a decision. And, one way or the other, we'll see what he does. If you keep Al Borges, I don't know what the point would be in firing anybody else. I think you go with it, or if you decide to go differently, then you start shuffling things up. So, that's going to be his biggest, thing of the off season. We won't know for a while, I'm sure, but it has to be something that's looked at.
Well, whatever happens, whether Coach Borges or someone on the staff is gone, whether Michigan finds a way to win a bowl game impressively. I think it's not too soon to say that, man, is the pressure going to be on next year, and that this is a road-heavy, very tough schedule. It's going to be brutal next year.
Yep, and this has got to be it. You've got to make your move now, because your fans are on edge as it is. Some have already jumped overboard, but some might have came back after they saw the effort against Ohio State. I don't know, but I know that back-to-back 8-5 years, or 7, I guess they're 7-5 now. They could be 7-6. Just is not going to work. And forget the expectations of, well, Brady says if they don't win a championship, they're failing. All this, that's fine, but you have to show improvement year to year, and you have to show development year to year, and you have to take a jump, and you can't keep getting slapped around by Michigan State, the way that's happening. You can't come close and lose again to Ohio State, and you can't, kind of throw up all of yourself and blow one at Penn State and then, panic and blow one at Iowa. I mean, you can't do this. They spend too much money here. They have too many resources. The fan base is too big. The players are too good. The talent is too high for you to be 8-5 or 7-6 or whatever it is for 3 straight seasons. That just cannot happen. And if it happens again, then all bets have to be off, because while Dave Brandon has vouched for him and he's the guy and this, that, and the other, if it goes sour again and it's the same situation you're sitting in and you haven't markedly showed improvement, then something's fundamentally wrong, and you question whether or not Brady can get this job done at all, or if this is too big for him. And so next year, in many ways, might not be one of those years where do it or you're fired, but I think in a lot of ways maybe it's a make or break year, because once you lose momentum as a head coach, it is next to impossible to get it back. And I don't think he's completely lost momentum yet, but it's on the edge. But once that ball starts going down the other way, it's almost impossible to pick it up and get it back moving in the opposite direction if you don't have any major success to hang your hat on. And he does it, really. I mean, 11-2 was great, but it wasn't a Big Ten title. It wasn't anything else other than that. So, this is a huge year. You got to start going in the other direction, or otherwise it's going to be hard to turn it around.
I agree with that, and I think so much for a quiet off season. The natives are going to remain restless until Labor Day weekend. It's going to be interesting as usual. One final thought, though, Nick. Now that the regular season is over, we have the Big Ten championship game coming up on Saturday. Of course, down in Buckeye Land, there is joy everywhere after the BCS poll came out on Sunday. They're hanging on just a thread above Auburn, even though Auburn's president isn't too pleased about that whole situation. What do you take or think about that Michigan State matchup coming up Saturday? I think State has a very, very good chance to take these guys down.
Yeah, I do too. I think that, I think the line was 6. I would maybe even keep it a little closer now. I don't even know how big of an upset it would be. I think Michigan State, this is a fascinating matchup, given Ohio State's offense, which is every bit as good as advertised, and Michigan State's defense, which is every bit as good as advertised. They're two of the best units in the country. Ohio State might have the best offense in the country, and Michigan State probably has the best defense in the country. So there it is. It's strength against strength, and what do you got? Who's going to get it done? And when those games happen, it's always somebody else that is the X factor. And maybe for Ohio State, it's somebody on defense that steps up and does something. Or for Michigan State, I think it's probably Connor Cook. If he can step up and become a big-time guy in that game, then it gives them the advantage. But I think Michigan State definitely has a chance to win the football game, so much so that I don't even know who I would pick if we had to do it right now. Because I think there's a lot of issues that we haven't seen exposed with Ohio State. What I keep going back to is yesterday or Saturday was the toughest game Ohio State's played all season, and Michigan is a 7-5 football team that isn't very good. So if Michigan was the best team they've played all year, what have they been doing, and who have they proved it against? Michigan State hasn't played a lot of people, but they did play Notre Dame, and they did play Michigan, and they did play. I don't know. That's about it. So I mean, they've done a few things here and there, but I feel like Michigan State is a little bit more tested than Ohio State. I look at Ohio State and I just see a team that has played almost no one in 2 years. And I wonder, what are you going to do when you play somebody who's really all put together? And that's what I really want to see. I want to see if Ohio State's for real, and I want to see if Michigan State's offense has done enough to put itself at that next level to be, a championship-type team and go to the Rose Bowl and maybe make some noise there as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating game to watch. I think we can at least say after watching the entire Big Ten season, we've got the two best teams battling it out in Indy. So that is a good thing. Any way you see Auburn jumping over Ohio State?
I don't know how you would justify it at this point. You've got them there already. So unless, I guess if Auburn, who are they playing, Missouri in the SEC title game?
Missouri, yes.
Yeah, so unless Auburn just completely destroys Missouri and Ohio State needs like multiple overtimes, or something, and Braxton Miller gets hurt or something like that, that's the only way I think I could see it happening. Otherwise, I don't know how you justify it, because you already have them there if both teams win their games, because if Ohio State beats Michigan State, that's a pretty darn good win. And that shouldn't hurt them, I don't think. I think that if you hurt them for beating Michigan State, I think you're disrespecting what Michigan State is, which is a very good football team, and one that I think if they played Missouri in the same situation, would, it'd be the same deal. I mean, you're playing similar football teams. So I can't see it. It would be very, very interesting if that happened, and I would like to know the logic behind it, I guess, if both teams win and Auburn jumps them. But I think if Ohio State wins the football game, they're going to the BCS title game. I think Michigan State, pretty much either way, is headed to the Rose Bowl. So both teams have put themselves in position to be exactly where they want to be.
Our guest here on our Michigan Game Day segment, as we've wrapped up the Ohio State game, Michigan beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive. And Nick, now with the season coming to an end, the regular season, as I said, I want to thank you for joining us so many times during the season. I know our listeners enjoy hearing from you because we're always following you all football season, all year really, because it never ends. But thanks for all the time that you've given us, and we look forward to getting you back after the season and talking about what's going to happen with this program.
Absolutely, no problem. And hopefully next year it won't be so doom and gloom, right? Every time. maybe we'll have some better things to talk about.
I can't see a way that it can be. There could be more doom and gloom next year.
There you go.
Thank you, Mike.
No problem.
Right around the corner, Wolverine Quick Hits, as we wrap it up for yet another week here on the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, the 2013 Big Ten Football Awards were announced Monday evening during a live show on the Big Ten Network, with University of Michigan fifth-year senior offensive tackle Taylor Lewan being named the recipient of the Remington Pace Offensive Lineman of the Year award for the second consecutive year, and sophomore tight end Devin Funchess earning Tight End of the Year honors. It marks the third year in a row a Michigan player has been named the Big Ten's top offensive lineman. Prior to Lewan claiming the award in successive seasons, fifth-year senior center David Moak won the inaugural Remington Pace Offensive Lineman of the Year award in 2011. Lewan headlined the Wolverines' 5 All-Big Ten honorees, earning a first-team recognition from both the coaches and the media. Funchess and cornerback Blake Countess were also named to the All-Big Ten first team by the media and earned All-Conference second-team honors from the coaches. Senior cornerback Courtney Avery was named the Big Ten Sportsmanship Award recipient for the Michigan program. 5 other Wolverines received honorable mention in one or both of the votes: defensive tackle Jabril Black, quarterback Devin Gardner, kicker Brendan Gibbons, right tackle Michael Schofield, and cornerback Raymond Taylor. In hockey news, Mac Bennett scored with 1:35 remaining in the third period to lift the University of Michigan hockey team, rated number 3 heading into this week's action, to a 5-4 win at Ohio State on Monday night inside Value City Arena. The Wolverines played in their first Big Ten road game, and they've now won 4 straight and 10 of 13 to start the season. JT Compher had his first career 2-goal game, and Michael Downing and Zach Hyman each added their first goals of the season to lead the Wolverines, who have scored 19 times in their last 4 games. Goaltender Steve Racine, making his first start in net since November 16th at Nebraska-Omaha, made 39 saves in the net to improve to 4-0-1 on the season, despite Ohio State outshooting Michigan 12-4 in the first period and 43-26 for the game. Michigan will host the USA Under-18 program in an exhibition contest at 7 p.m. on Thursday night at Yost Ice Arena. Michigan again rated number 3 heading into this week's action, with a record of 10-2-1 overall, 2-0 in the Big Ten, both of those wins coming against the Buckeyes. In women's basketball action, a second-half rally by the University of Michigan women's team came up just short as number 15 LSU scored the game's final basket with 20 seconds remaining to break a 62-all tie and prevail by 64-62 in the championship game of the Barclays Center Invitational on Saturday night at the Barclays Center. Freshman guard Sierra Thompson and sophomore guard Madison Ristovsky led the Michigan offense, each scoring 13 points. Freshman guard Paige Rakers chipped in a career-best 12 points on 4 triples, and junior forward Saisha Gori scored 10 points. Senior forward Val Driscoll, making her third start of the season, scored 5 points to go with 11 boards and 6 blocks. Junior guard Nicole Elmblad, who was named to the all-tournament team, recorded 9 points, 7 boards, and 8 assists. U of M out-rebounded the much taller Tigers 39-30, but was plagued by 23 turnovers in the contest. Also of note was the absence of junior guard Shannon Smith, Michigan's leading scorer this season, who did not dress after an injury against Texas Tech earlier in the tournament. Michigan returns to action this Thursday, participating in the Big Ten ACC Challenge at Virginia. Tip-off is slated for 7 p.m. The Wolverines now 5-3 to start the season. And of course, we're recording this show on Tuesday afternoon, so we don't have the score of the Michigan-Duke game in the men's Big Ten ACC Challenge, but that should be a good one. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm going to take a little bit of vacation to sort of recover from the football season next week. We've already recorded a show. We had Michigan great Greg Skrepenak join us again this year. Greg's been with us off and on during the season. We always enjoy what he has to say and his perspective on Michigan football, so make sure you join us as we again talk about Ohio State this season and get Greg's thoughts not only on this season, but on Coach Brady Hoke, on Devin Gardner, a lot of other stuff, and also look forward to next year. As I've been reminding you lately, we're not just a football show. Even though the regular season has come to an end, we still have the bowl game, but we also have men and women's basketball. We have hockey. It's the inaugural season of Big Ten hockey, so after Christmas there is going to be so much to talk about. And yes, we never stop talking about football. The recruiting season, which never ends, will be coming up in February. We're going to be doing more recruiting shows this year. So after Christmas, after the bowl game, make sure you join us every week with what we hope you will find is the best coverage of Michigan athletics. So that's going to do it for this week. Again, we will be right back here next week. Wolverine great Greg Skrepenak will be with us as we talk more Michigan football. So until then, have a great Wolverine week, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for your support. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until we meet again, take care of yourselves, and as always, go blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue.